Okay, let's dive into this. Something huge has been making the rounds online. A major claim that the U.S. Supreme Court has just made a ruling that could completely turn global trade on its head. So, we're going to unpack exactly what this claim is, where it's coming from, and what the potential fallout could be. And boom, here it is. This is the headline causing all the fuss. The claim is that the highest court in the United States has officially ruled that the Trump administration's sweeping emergency tariffs are illegal. Now, this would be an absolutely monumental decision. So let's dig into what's being alleged here and analyze the fallout if it were true. All right, Section 1, a Supreme Court bombshell. First things first, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this supposed ruling. According to the story, a decision like this from the Supreme Court would kick off a massive chain reaction, creating some serious uncertainty across the entire global economic system. Now, the details on this claim get really specific, even down to a supposed vote count. The decision was allegedly 6-3 against the tariffs. And what's really being emphasized in this whole narrative is that this would have happened with a majority of Republican-appointed judges on the court, which, would make a decision like this even more of a big deal. So the core of this whole claim, the real meat of it, is this. The court's main argument would be that the president just overstepped his bounds. The supposed ruling says he illegally used his executive power to slap these tariffs on a global scale. So you might be asking, if this ruling were real, what would it actually do in the real world? Well, the first major shockwave would probably hit trade negotiations, and the claim points directly at a huge economic partner, India. To really get what's going on here, we gotta look at the numbers. The whole spat started because India put tariffs as high as 52% on some American goods. The U.S. fired back with a 26% tariff on India, which later got bumped up to 50%. This whole tit for tat is exactly why a new trade deal was even being talked about in the first place. But here's the kicker. The detail that makes this whole thing so incredibly shaky, that trade deal was never actually signed. A framework was all set, negotiations were about to kick off, but nothing was official. A ruling like the one being claimed would just blow that whole delicate process wide open. And this is a fantastic way to understand how these tariffs actually worked in practice. Let's use a simple t-shirt analogy. An Indian exporter makes a shirt for $100. Simple enough, right? But when it gets to the US, bam, a 50% tariff gets slapped on it. That extra $50, it goes straight to the US government. So the shirt ends up on the rack in an American store for $150. The American consumer paid more, but the US government pocketed that difference. And all that money the government was collecting, well, that brings us to maybe the biggest, most mind-boggling mystery in this whole story. The fallout isn't just about what happens next. It's about a ton of money that's already in the bank. Now, get ready for this number. Former President Trump himself once claimed the U.S. government was on track to earn $900 billion from these tariffs. I mean, that is just a staggering amount of money. And if those tariffs were suddenly declared illegal, well, that money becomes the center of a massive, massive debate. Which, of course, leads to the big one, the most important question of all. If the tariffs are illegal, what on earth happens to all that cash that was collected? This is where it could all get really complicated. Yeah, this opens up a few pretty chaotic possibilities. I mean, does that money get sent back to other countries? Does it get refunded to the American companies that actually paid it? Or does it somehow get handed back to the public? The analysis floating around suggests that if the government were forced to issue a refund that big, it could be, and I'm quoting here, an economic disaster for the U.S. Okay, Section 4, Trump's next possible moves. But hang on. Would a Supreme Court ruling really be the final nail in the coffin for these tariffs? The analysis that's out there suggests maybe not. It looks into whether there are other legal backdoors available. See, the alleged ruling is described as being super specific. It supposedly only struck down the use of one particular law as the reason for the tariffs, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA for short. That was the legal tool they used, and the claim is the court just blocked that specific path. However, here's where it gets interesting. Some legal experts are arguing that this wouldn't be a total dead end. The theory is that even with a ruling like this, there would still be, quote, many ways to reimpose these tariffs using different legal excuses. So what could these other routes even be? Well, one idea is that the administration could try to bring the tariffs back by claiming a national threat. Another is that they could just try to use a totally different law that wasn't part of this specific court case. So the door might not be completely slammed shut. And that brings us to our final section, a world of uncertainty. So all of this, the supposed ruling, the $900 billion, the potential legal workarounds, it all boils down to one thing, just massive, massive global uncertainty. This isn't just an American issue. It would send ripples of confusion to trading partners all over the world. Just think about South Korea, for example. They already have a signed and sealed trade deal with the US. A ruling like this would just throw them into a tailspin. Would it change their deal? Are the tariffs on their goods gone for good? Could they just pop back up tomorrow? Nobody would know. One analysis really summed up the mood perfectly, predicting that if this happened, the entire international trade system would be heading for a period of complete chaos, complete disorder. And that really leaves us with the final, critical question, doesn't it? You've got trade deals in limbo, hundreds of billions of dollars hanging in the balance, and brand new legal fights just waiting to happen. So what happens next? Well, I think the very first step, of course, is to figure out if this Supreme Court ruling is even real to begin with.